Hello, my name's Olurotimi Osha. July the 4th, 2026 was the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence of the Americans, which irrevocably dissolved the bonds between the Americans and the British Crown. Now, today, what I want to do is look at a cause that may have precipitated that you know irrevocable act of the Declaration of Independence. If we recall the events that led to the battles between the British forces and the patriots, were first of all the Stamp Act, the resistance to the Stamp Act, and other taxes, right? All the taxes that were imposed by the British because of the enormous debt they had incurred in defeating the French in the 7 Year War. Now, then there was the Boston Tea Party, right? The Boston Tea Party, in which the Sons of Liberty dumped about 92,000 pounds of British merchants' tea in the sea, the Boston Harbor, and of course, the British Parliament was rather heavy-handed, and they retaliated by imposing the Intolerable Acts or the Coercive Acts in 1774, mainly to punish Massachusetts for the Boston Tea Party. And once this was done, then the First Continental Congress was called to boycott British trade, because the purpose of the Intolerable Acts was to isolate Massachusetts. They revoked the Charter of Massachusetts, removed self-governance from them, and they placed an embargo on trade with Massachusetts, with Boston Harbor, so to basically cripple the economy. But what the British Parliament and the British government didn't realize was that the other colonists, right, the other colonies would sympathize with the British. So eventually, the Sons of Liberty, which organized all over the other colonial networks, right, on the continent, were able to garner support, and eventually, there were all these skirmishes, and they retaliated by placing an embargo, right, by boycotting British trade, right. They would not consume British goods, they would not import, they would not export to Britain, and they were sabotaging them. And of course, eventually there was something that was very consequential. The last royal governor of Virginia, Lord Dunmore, would then issue a proclamation. He would declare the patriots, the rebels, as traitors to the British Crown, and of course, the 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 penalty for that was life, was death. So he urged them to stop being rebellious, and to join the British troops. And once they refused, he then issued the proclamation in November 1775, in which he actually declared that he would free enslaved people, right? He would free the enslaved Africans or blacks. He would free them if they revolted against their rebel masters. So we call them patriots, in resisting the British, or the British called called the Americans, the colonists, rebels. That if they revolted against their masters and ran to join the British army, they would be free. They would be free men. So there was this back and forth. So he issued that proclamation. But once Lord Dunmore issued that proclamation, which he anticipated would scare the colonials, and cause them to, that they would be afraid of a general slave uprising. So, and that would cause them to back down and, stop being rebellious. But it only angered them the more, as the youngest delegate of who was the youngest signer of the Declaration of Independence, Edward Rutledge, who was 26 at the time of the signing, would declare that the escalation, had, let me look for the quotes, that it had caused, uh, sort of a final act, and there was no backing down. That the dissolution and independence was certain. But I'm going to try and read the quote. So he says, he wrote that the proclamation had caused an eternal separation between Great Britain and the colonies than any other expedient. So this is what Edward Rutledge had written. Edward Rutledge would later on go and become governor of South Carolina. He was from South Carolina. Again, the youngest person to sign the Declaration of Independence. So, interestingly, the video has gotten to 6 minutes. I was trying to keep this very short. So there's a lot to talk about. So Lord Dunmore's proclamation did inspire, almost 20,000 enslaved black people to run away, to rebel, to flee, try and get to the British side. But and later on there will be another proclamation by a British general, Sir Henry Clinton. That was in 1779 when the war was now full blown. He did his own was it Philipsburg Proclamation, and I think he was able to garner maybe as many as 2,000 blacks to flee. But when all is said and done, after the whole war, only about 2,000 blacks who were able to join the British side as loyalists, as they were called, were able to gain their freedom, and then eventually the British would settle them in Nova Scotia in Canada. So importantly, Dunmore's proclamation and his invitation to enslaved blacks to revolt and flee and enlist in the British Army for their freedom would create what was called the Dunmore Ethiopian Regiment, right? So, but in any event, let me read his proclamation. I'll read his proclamation. That was something I wanted to do. I wanted to read the proclamation directly from the horse's mouth, and I'm going to read a rebuttal from Virginia, right? There was a rebuttal from Virginia. So the proclamation was November 14, right? No, sorry, it was actually November the 7th. He wrote it November 7th, 1775, and it was presented November 14, 1775. So let me read it. Okay. By His Excellency the Right Honorable John Earl of Dunmore, His Majesty's Lieutenant and Governor General of the Colony and Dominion of Virginia and Vice Admiral of the same, a proclamation. As I have ever entertained hopes that an accommodation might have taken place between Great Britain and this colony, without being compelled by my duty to this most disagreeable but now absolutely necessary step, rendered so by a body of armed men unlawfully assembled, bring on His Majesty's tenders and the formation of an army, and that army now on the march to attack His Majesty's troops and destroy the well-disposed subjects of this colony. To defeat such unreasonable purposes, and that all such traitors and their abettors may be brought to justice, and that the peace and good order of the colony may be again restored, which the ordinary course of the civil law is unable to effect, I have thought fit to issue this my proclamation, hereby declaring that until the aforesaid good purposes can be obtained, I do, in virtue of the power and authority of me given by His Majesty, determine to execute martial law and cause the same to be executed throughout this colony, and to the end that peace and good order may be sooner be restored. I do require every person capable of bearing arms to resort to His Majesty's standard, or be looked upon as traitors to His Majesty's crown and government, and thereby become liable to the penalty the law inflicts upon such offences, such as forfeiture of life, confiscation of lands and company, and I do hereby further declare all indentured servants, Negroes or others appertaining to rebels, free that are able and willing to bear arms. You hear it again, free that are able and willing to bear arms. They joining His Majesty's troops as soon as may be, for the more speedily reducing this colony to a proper sense of the duty to His Majesty's crown and dignity. I have further order and require all His Majesty's liege subjects to retain their quittance or any other taxes due to that may become due to their own custody, till such time as peace may be again restored to this, at present, most unhappy country, or demanded of them of their former statutory purposes by officers properly authorized to receive the same, given under my hand on board the ship William of Norfolk, the 7th day of November, in the 16th year of His Majesty's reign. Dunmore, God save the King. So the British, they have a style, a way of writing. So there you have it. That's Lord Dunmore's. That's his proclamation, and it's interesting. I thought I'd have enough time to be able to give the rebuttal of the Virginia House of Burgesses, because they responded promptly in December 1775. I will do that in another video when I look at the use of black soldiers on both sides. In fact, it wasn't just the British forces that sought to enlist the enslaved black people by offering them freedom. The Continental Army also did the same, notably Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton actually also he advocated, he championed that blacks should be enlisted in the Continental Army, and offered freedom if they served throughout the duration of the war. That was when he made the argument that blacks were just as courageous and intelligent as the white people were. But Edward Rutledge, right, the youngest signer of the Declaration, he worked very hard to kick out any blacks that were enlisted in the Continental Army. So he worked very hard to get them kicked out. But there you have it. I will continue to discuss the road to independence. My name is Oluro Timiosha. I'll keep you posted. Thank you.